Suave afternoon, Suave afternoon, Suave afternoon. This is Brother Suave, your mind-blowing, thought-provoking, and eye-opening on-air personality, life coach, psychotherapist, author, and creator. Hope you guys having a Suave day.
Yeah, and with that, let's commence the pay.
Okay, I'm so swavelous, you so swavelous.
Together we can fix the trauma that's befallen us.
Divine social interactions remains marvelous.
Mind-blowing, swavelicious talk, higher consciousness. But think, let not your hearts be troubled, Dr. Brother Suave.
Divine light give you double.
Greetings and Suave evening. This is Dr. Brother Suave, your mind-blowing, thought-provoking, and eye-opening on-air personality life coach, psychotherapist, author, social divine therapist, and your host of Social Therapy with Dr. Brother Suave. Tonight, I'm blessed. I'm blessed for being able to see another day I've never seen before. Thank God for giving me another opportunity to get it right, even in my flawed state. And I'm just excited about tonight. I just want to just thank everyone for showing up and supporting the show. We've been doing great with our numbers, and I just thank God for everything that he do for us. I thank God for just helping me out with my health, life, and strength. Thank you. My cousin is showing up. How you doing, cuz? So listen, tonight we're going to have a very, very informative session tonight. I have a very special guest, this brother Kingsley Grant, very dear friend of mine, colleague, professional. We went to grad school together. How you doing, brother Wally? Happy because we will have a mind-blowing, thought-provoking, and eye-opening experience. And so tonight, we're going to be talking about topics. And the topic is this overused clinical diagnosis in terms and misused by non-professionals, non-clinicians. And also, we're going to be talking about how to use empathetic communication to boost longevity in our marriage and relationships. And so I'm super excited about tonight because my guest, how you doing, V? My guest, man, he's brilliant, he's talented. We went to grad school together, man, and I just always remember how powerful he was, how empathetic, how understanding he was, and he was always a great student and took everything he did with pride. And so I'm excited about participating in tonight's Social Therapy with Dr. Brother Suave. I'm super excited. So tonight, my very special guest is Mr. Kingsley Grant. He's a national and international transformational speaker. He's a certified leadership and relational coach, adjunct professor, published author, podcast, and licensed marriage and family therapist. He specializes in helping individuals, couples, and families get their desired results by teaching them practical interpersonal and emotional intelligence skills. Kingsley is a proud father. He's a proud husband, a man of faith, an entrepreneur at heart. He is the president of Helping Families Improve, Inc. It's a company that focuses on improving communications within relationships. He is a husband, a dad, and a man of faith, an optimist, and an entrepreneur at heart, and someone who sings his Grammy Award songs in the shower. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Kingsley Grant.
Hey, Dr. Brother Suave, it's great being here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about being here with you on this show. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, man. I'm happy. And, it is good. And should I say great to always maintain relationships,
Yes.
And you never, one thing about relationships, when people new come in your life, they have their perceptions of you. But when you have longevity in relationships, those people can co-sign you, not the relationships that's there like temporarily, because these people have their perception about your character. But one thing about a person, when you're consistent with something, this is who you are. And I'm just happy, we always had a great relationship when we was in grad school many years ago.
Yep.
Yes, many years ago. But man, it's been an honor knowing you, honor working with you, honor tonight. It was an honor just being in class with you, man. Listen, you guys don't know, but everyone know me. I am so intimidated by technology, and I was always intimidated by it. And one of the simplest things that a lot of people don't have a trouble with, but for me, it's a stretch, was a PowerPoint. And you're talking about going to school, working law enforcement. I was an administrator at the school system and working a lot of overtime. and taking 5 classes in grad school. I mean, that was a stretch. I'm talking about a real stretch. I was worn out. And for him to take the time from all the things he was doing as a husband, a father, his business, working, because we were working students.
Yep.
And for him to take the time out to do that long behind PowerPoint that I gave him, it was a lot. I feel that I'm indebted, you know. And again, I don't take that for granted because I don't take things for granted. And I've been saying it. I've been saying this for years. I appreciate you, Kingsley, and man, you are great.
Man, it's you know, so I think it was such a, we had this connection, that relationship, that was the least I could do. I felt like that was, you know, the way we kind of connected and the way we kind of interacted. I think that was a very natural progression of what I would do for somebody who was like that to me. And so it was my privilege to have served in that manner. And I know that you do appreciate, because every time we talk, you know, which we talk pretty often, you always bring that up. So, and again, I do know that that means a lot, meant a lot to you, but I just did it because I felt like we had a connection, and it was my pleasure basically to serve in that capacity.
Yes. Well, again, I tell you, because when I say something, I mean it.
Yeah, I know you
The
do.
good, better, and different. This is who I am. So tonight, I'm excited about talking about these things. So as we discuss using empathetic communication to boost longevity in our marriage and relationships, I'm going to be intertwining it, because again, in our relationships, and use empathetic language on communication, I think is extremely important. I think it's important because it shows empathy. I think it's important is because you show the person that you respect and care for them. And one of the things I wanted to just go into dialogue with you is your experiences as a therapist. How effective you think that is? Because I know that's your mantra.
Yeah.
But in theory, but how is it in practice?
You know, one thing I like about you is that you go counter to certain things, right? So if something comes up, you're going to counter, and you're going to bring in enough evidence to support that, why you go counter to whatever it's like a standing protocol, right? Something that people just accept to be so. You kind of challenge that status quo, which I really like. And so one of the things I know and hear so often, and I'm sure you've heard, most people in relationships, they hear this word, the phrase effective communication. They'll say, hey, the reason why you don't have a good relationship, or what you might need to do to better your relationship, is to be more effective in your communication. Granted, I know it's important to be effective, but one of the things I find is, as I began to work with so many people over the hundreds and hundreds, I mean, actually thousands over the years, right?
Thousands is thousands.
Literally thousands, right? I hear this term over and over again, and I'm saying to myself, if it was only effective communication, why is it that so many people are still having these relational problems and issues? So there's got to be something more, right? So taking one of your pages off of your book, I say, okay, let me look a bit deeper to say, well, what might be the missing components? And so I realized that it's effective, yes, but it's effective, and there's an and piece that was missing, right? And the piece I find was empathic communication, because I find that when you add that piece to it, it just changes the dynamic of relationships. It changes how we interact, right? And so I coined the phrase, empathic, not coined the phrase, but I just termed empathic communication, because what I find is, and the definition that I created is the ability to communicate your understanding of another while doing your best to share their feelings, right? So if I find that if I'm using empathy as a lens through which to look at a relationship, it's going to drive me deeper into the context of which I'm in, with a marital relationship or a dating relationship. Empathetic relationship, conversation or communication drives you deeper. And that's what most people are longing for, a deeper connection, right? And so that's the direction I've kind of taken my model to say, hey, let's just go beyond just effective. What if we do empathic? And and then I break that down to help people understand what that means.
Absolutely. Yes. And again, and I must say, I always said effective communication, because I know I always said it because I just thought communication was super generic. Yeah. And the thing is, the empathetic relationship in terms of human beings, and we learn in grad school, just understanding.
Yes.
Trying to understand. So if you want someone to understand you, you have to understand them.
Yep. So,
And,
and I think is the idea of understanding, because we know that when we step in someone else's shoes, right, empathy. But here's what I find sometimes: people, when they hear the word empathy, for example, right, there's three variances to empathy, because we just think, okay, I can feel you, I get you, I understand you, but
Mhm.
it goes a bit deeper than that. So what happened is, the first layer is more cognitive, where I can say, hey, I can see where you're coming from. I get that. I can understand that. That's more cognitive. That's really okay. We all can do that. It's not a rocket science. But then the next layer is where we are going to say, okay, well, what if I go a bit deeper than just a cognitive piece, right? And
Mhm.
the next layer is emotional. So it's emotional empathy, where I'm emoting. I'm saying, hey, I've been there. I felt that. I can relate because I have an emotion in what you're going through, and I can actually feel. And we hear the term many times, I feel you. That's emotional empathy, right? So
Mhm.
that is great. But those two empathy, or forms of empathy, doesn't get you to act on them. It can allow you to stand at a distance and still not
Mhm.
do anything. So the next layer is called empathic concern, which
Mhm.
really means I'm now going to say, not only do I understand you, not only do I feel you and
Mhm.
my emotions wrapped around what you're going through, I am going to do something with what it is I'm experiencing. And that's empathic, where that's a form of empathy. That's empathic communication, brings into the mix that effective communication does not.
Yes, and it reminds me of a very universal term: "You do better when you know better." Well, I never thought that people do better when they know better. I
Mm,
thought they had to process what was saying, but also in action is like faith without works. Is
it's
that
dead.
you have to, even though you understand and you
Yeah.
say the cognitive, even though you can empathize from
Right.
the emotional component,
Yeah.
but you have to be able to carry through with actions.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
how do you think the other person feels?
Right.
Like,
Right.
I mean, I thought I communicated effectively. You did tell me you understood,
Yeah.
but I really don't see any
There you go.
change in the
There you
behavior.
go. There you
And
go.
and, and that's something that I would like to
Yeah.
transition into,
Yeah.
in terms of as a therapist, because I think a lot of times people don't realize the hours and hours and hours and hours that we put in before you even get licensed, and then the
Yes.
hours and hours and hours you put in, and you're talking about 20 years of doing this stuff. They have no
Yeah.
idea. And so when you're having these conversations, I guess people think you're just making it up and just blowing
Right.
smoke, but the reality is it's definitely something that people have to learn to respect. Here's Ms. McDonald. She says good empathetic concerns to do something. Thank you
Mhm.
so much. And see, this is
Mhm.
the thing I love to do, because our guests are empowering and
Of
educating
course.
people and being able to, because I have my experience, but I don't want everybody just to hear it from me. It's important that they hear it from a whole bunch of people. And these are
Mhm.
great guests I'm having. And so my thing is this: as a therapist and doing couples, um, what do you say when you have the person who's going through the three layers but still not making improvement?
Mhm.
What are some of the strategies and techniques that you talk with the person who's having difficulties moving forward, and then the other person who's struggling with being patient because they've been trying and
Mhm.
following your techniques?
I think it really requires, where again, going back to the empathic communication, really, it allows you to step back a little bit and wonder and ask the question, am I truly communicating effectively now? So that's where the effective part comes in. But I need to get the feedback. I need to check in with my spouse. I've been married for 37 years. So
Hmm.
I have had a journey myself, right? And I have learned a lot of things along the way from my own personal experience. And I realized, for me with my wife, I have to pull back and step and zoom out, so to speak, to see, am I missing something? Because not everyone receive information the same way, right? So the way I'm
Hmm.
giving it to her is how I want for myself, but that may be not the way she
No.
receive it. So I need to then adjust myself to then see if am I aligning with how she receive communication. And sometimes when people are not having that sync
Yeah.
taking place, because somebody is off. And more than likely, I say, I want to take the first responsibility as a sender to say, could it be that I'm not sending the message as clearly as I ought to? And my wife in this example is not her fault, it's my fault. And I start with me, right?
Great. So again, that's excellent when it comes to sender and a receiver.
Yeah.
So when you take that initiative to say it's my fault, and then you still seeing the behaviors, and then do you think it's a possibility you got to re-examine that, saying,
Yeah.
it's like, for example, I know for certain things I used to try to keep very simple to eliminate any gray areas. So I used to be very strategic with yes or no answers, only because I find it sometimes easier to avoid the gray areas, because sometimes people can talk and make it blurry, and it makes it very complicated,
And that's why I think you're right. I mean, simplistic approach is the best, right? Keep it simple, student type of thing, right? It's best to be simple. But I find sometimes we're not patient with the process. So if it's not happening, then I may need to ask, to the person, say, okay, here's what I'm trying to communicate.
Yes.
How can I then communicate this to you in a manner in which you may hear it? So is that dialogue? We're now start dialing in on the dialogue process, because we might need to then examine that piece that is missing. And sometimes we don't take the time to do that because we're in such a rush to get everything done right away. And I've been guilty, my friend. I've been guilty over the years.
I think all of us have.
I've learned along the way,
especially, and that's why sometimes they're just asking a question. So what I'm saying, what are you getting from it? Because you want to hear their words, not your own words, and again, patience, because everyone is just like when we was in kindergarten, everyone started off with ABCs. We didn't start, and some people didn't get it. Eventually they did before we finished the school year, but sometimes people develop at different rates, and this is just how it is.
Yeah.
And it's up to, when it comes to taking personal responsibility, to say, hey, I have to be patient because this person is not learning at this level,
Good example. I like that, because you know what, that kind of allows us to see the progression, right? So if that person is not there yet, for example, if you are in a race and you're on a track and you're, say, halfway down, and the person you're trying to run with is way back at the starter, I got to go back. And sometimes we expect that person to be where we are right away, but they haven't even left the gates yet. I may need to go back and say, okay, maybe we need to run together. How can we yoke ourselves together? And I find one of the most important aspects of this whole empathic communication is curiosity. Becoming curious, right? So curiosity is what it is going to allow me to see things, ask the right questions, so that I can get the information that I may need to act on, so I can change the dynamic of the relationship. And that I find sometimes we don't become as curious as we should be. We're more in a judgment state. We're judging things and assigning labels and interpreting things in a way that's not helpful. And before long, we are spiraling in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. And speaking in spiraling, you just triggered something. So I was going to ask it anyway. So, I'm always going to play devil's advocate and stuff like that.
Of course.
So the individual, they're having difficult times improving, relating, and processing, and just getting it. Your opinion, your experience. They find themselves getting frustrated. You're providing the patience, they're understanding, but the person is not getting it. And these things where nobody's perfect when they explode, and they're, instead of you're not rushing, you're being patient with it, but they're getting frustrated because they're not getting it, and then they displace that stuff on you as though it's your fault that they're not getting it, and I'm not rushing you to get it. It's just like communication. You're not rushing them to respond quickly, and then they respond so quickly, and then they have to correct themselves. Like, you're not rushing. I'm not rushing to get it because I know it takes time.
Right.
It's not going to happen overnight. It didn't happen for me overnight. It didn't happen for millions, or should I say billions?
Yes.
But you're losing patience with yourself.
Yeah.
As though, and then you've taken it out on me because you're not getting it. What's your experience?
You know what, I find is a great question, and great insight you're presenting, because I find sometimes possibly there is a kink in the hose, right? The water is not flowing through properly, and we're wondering, why is the water not coming through? The pipe is on, but the water is not coming through at the end. And we say, oh, the hose, maybe this hose, we start talking about the hose and how bad this hose is and everything else. But then we go around the corner, there's a kink in the hose that's stopping the flow, right? So sometimes there's a kink in the relationship, and we are trying to force a water through. It's not coming through. And we're saying, okay, I'm impatient. I'm waiting. But sometimes we need to go back and check the hose. Is there a kink somewhere? Is there something that may have happened that this person hasn't got over, and it's a kink in the relationship that I might need to go back and examine? And if they truly if they want to be able to open up, they may say, hey, you know what? I hear what you're saying, but I'm still stuck back there. There's a kink back there, and we need to go back and get that kink out. And sometimes it's possibly because I don't look at this whole linear idea of A causes B. There's a number of factors between A and B, A1, A2, and so on is happening.
Yes, I was going to say,
right.
Yes.
And I need to go back and check where is it happening, and not necessarily think because A is on, B must happen. No, it could be there's a disruption of the flow, and sometimes that may reveal to us why it's not getting through, and want to explore every possibility before we move to the next step.
Yes. Good evening, Curtis. So thank you. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick commercial, go into station identification, and we'll be right back with Social Therapy with Dr. Brother Suave.
Programs like this are made possible by Neighborhood Planet Broadcasting Systems, Neighborhood Planet Network, iBlister Digital Media Creative, and from contributions to NPNTv from viewers like you. Thank you. Tune in and stream live now. Social Therapy with Dr. Brother Suave, the podcast, is now being broadcast on NPN Voice. NPN Voice can be found on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, SoundCloud, and now on Audible and Amazon Music, and anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. Social Therapy with Dr. Brother Suave, the podcast, now on NPN Voice. NPN Voice. Got voice. You heard?
Greetings, this is Dr. Brother Suave, and we're back with Social Therapy with Dr. Brother Suave, with my very special guest, Mr. Kingsley Grant. Man, we have been empowered so far, man. I'm learning stuff, I feel like a student around here.
But I call myself a student of life, so we are students, my friend.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing, being open to always growing, and every year I'm definitely trying to grow. Every day I'm trying to grow. And I love this growth process. I really, really love it. Man, that give and receiver was something else,
Yes, it is.
And so I thank you. Those three layers, I was just hoping that we get a little more feedback, but I'm definitely excited about this is what I'm learning.
Yeah.
Question. again, we in a time right now that the years, the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours and individuals we have spent time practicing. You know how when people go and in church and they're the general layman, and then you have the minister who spent years in study. They just wasn't reading the Bible. They learned and had professors and mentors and people to correct them in terms of their interpretation and misinterpretation of the Bible.
Yes.
And people been in church for years and still struggled. They didn't have necessarily the appropriate training. Yeah. And they felt with all their heart, they knew what they was talking about certain things. But that's why every Sunday you're like, wow, these preachers are preaching. And sometimes the commission is just struggling with understanding these basic things. And it was this thing, I don't know what you call it. I'm not for sure. I don't know what you call it, but I know they had a bootleg name for it, was the Bible of mental health. We say carry your Bible everywhere with you, because no matter how much you think you know, you're going to always have to refer back to this. And I know when we was in grad school, they never expected us to know it all, because it was a life work. It was so much in terms of we had to constantly get interpretation and helping. And they said over the years, and I don't think I still know this thing. And then it changed. Oh my God. And so this brings me to social media and sound bites.
Yeah.
We have so many people who are overusing and misusing these clinical terms when don't have any understanding or any person to help them interpret what they think they're knowing. And so I had wrote down just a few things about some of the misused or overused clinical or mental health terms, such as bipolar. You hear that? Oh, they bipolar. Like, wow. You can't pay attention. You got ADHD. They're not knowing. And the one that's super trending now is narcissism.
Oh yes.
My goodness. I'm like, wow.
Oh yes.
So before I give my piece, I would like your input about this.
I mean, that is, I think that's a very brilliant observation that you're bringing to the table, because what happened is we have so many people who are regurgitating, right? They're like parrots. They hear something, or they go, of course, to Uncle Google, Dr. Google, and that becomes their prescribed way of knowing everything. And they've now taken that and they put that and superimpose that upon any behavior that fits whatever Google tells them, right? And as you may have heard, a little information in the hand of some people can be very dangerous. I give a quick example. I went on a missions trip many years ago with the church I was at many years back, and one of the guys who was on this trip, he watched a lot of documentary, right? A lot of documentary, and he would, when we were out there, we had gone to Haiti, way out in the boonies, and we were doing a medical clinic, and I remember what he would act as if he is the doctor, right? This guy has no experience, no training in medical school, right? But he watched so many documentary, he thinks he could now diagnose somebody who walked in that place for the medical, we had nurses there and trained people who were the ones supposed to do that. But before he brought them to the nurse or to it, he's like trying to diagnose. I'm thinking like, man, a little information can be so dangerous. Imagine him telling that person who walked up something and they left with that, and they could probably hurt themselves. And I see that happening so often today. So going back to those terms, like I know that the whole narcissism, I hear that so many times. My husband, he is a narcissist, right? Or he is bipolar, because up and down. I tell people to stop using bipolar loosely.
Yes, but she's right.
Yeah,
I mean, these are real people with these diagnoses, and people just making a mockery of it. It's so disrespectful. And again, these people who are struggling with this mental health issues, this is not no laughing matter.
Exactly.
And for someone to just use it so loosely, because they just really trying to hurt a person. That's really the bottom line. in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I have clients who come in and said to me that, my wife or my husband said I'm a narcissist, and here's the reason why. And they're almost like gaslighting them so that they begin to question their own mental health. Am I really a narcissist? And so I find many times in some situation where that is word is used, is so easily used. And sometimes it's what's the behavior ought to be called, and I find that to be many, many times true, is in a person may be verbally abusive, right? And so because he or she, mainly the he than she, but it happens on both sides, but mainly he, that person is now labeled a narcissist because he wants to just control and take over. And so that's the easiest way to label it. But you're not calling out what he is. He's a verbal abuser. Call him what it is. Don't throw narcissism in the mix, right?
Exactly.
So he get a pass basically by being called a narcissist and not being called what he really is at that moment, an abuser. But I think people use that to deflect, because it takes work to work with people and modify even our behavior. And so instead of doing that, it's easier to call you a narcissist because I don't want to somehow modify my behavior and see what I'm doing to contribute to whatever is happening. It's just easier to label you and just like, you know what, that's who you are, and you can't be fixed, you can't be helped, so I can behave the way I want to behave. So sometimes it's a deflection and it's a weak excuse for being lazy to do the work. I say, there are some people, a very small percentage, who may fit that diagnosis, but the way it's being used today,
yes,
I get $1 for every time I hear it now. I could retire.
I think you'd be rich right now.
Yes.
I mean, you hear it on everything, and also, and it's being weaponized.
It is.
And again, it's being weaponized, and I never would say I hate to address gender issues because I've never been afraid of that.
Right.
But it seems like you're a man, you're a narcissist. It's making that a close association. Yeah. Instead of doing the work. Right. If a person, like, for example, if I'm an a-hole and being disrespectful, right, that's who I am.
Yes.
Call
it what it is.
Call it what it is, but don't sit there and say you're a narcissist. And also, people tend to, how a person who struggles with their own insecurities, and don't want to recognize and do the work, and they see somebody have a level of proud and proud of their accomplishments, you're a narcissist.
Exactly. I know.
Oh my God.
Like you can't, celebrate the achievement, right?
You can't have any form of achievement.
Yeah, right. It's almost like taking that away from you. No, don't let anybody take away your achievement. Celebrate that. I'm the first person in my family who have gone to grad school, graduated, and have a license, all different things. And I don't use that to beat anybody over the head, but that's a fact. That is a fact. And I can celebrate that and be proud of that without being prideful, right? Without being prideful. And so people need to understand that those things are just really sometimes a mislabeling and just mischaracterization of people,
Okay. So here's the thing. Curtis says, can you explain the actual definition of these terms? I have heard them, but never researched them. So, Kingsley, I just happen to have this DSM.
Thank you.
Would you like me?
Please do. Please take it from there.
Okay. So, what we was talking about was narcissistic personality disorder, the pervasive pattern of grandiosity and fantasy or behavior, need for admiration or lack of empathy beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts indicated by 5 or more of the following. The following has a grandiose sense of self-importance, is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, and ideal love, believes he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by people associated with other special or higher status people, requires excessive admiration, has a sense of entitlement, interpersonality, exploitive, which is they take advantage of others to achieve his or her goals, lacks empathy, and is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others, and is often envious of others and believes that others are envious of him or her. And the last one is strong, arrogant, haughty behaviors and attitudes. And so, and again, these things may appear really appear to be simple, but it's how you interpret it. Because again, watch this. Don't confuse confidence with arrogance.
Right.
So they're like, you seen the back, it's like, for example, if you're trying to help someone and you say, well, this is what I do. Oh my God, you know everything. You just want to feel more important. I said, no, see, there's a problem. I'm trying to bring some solution to it.
Yeah.
And I'm that authority to address it. It doesn't mean I know everything. I'm proficient in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have lawyers. Some lawyers going to win, some going to lose. You have two lawyers.
Right.
Nobody knows everything. They're just proficient in it. And we talked about thousands and thousands of hours.
Yeah.
We're not soundbiters.
Yeah.
This is hours and hours, thousands.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these things are dangerous. And so I hope that you got some understanding to that, Kegler.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate you for your input. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So as a therapist, and you've been doing this for years, man. And again, I always like your approach, because your approach is not just from your clinical training, but your personality and your code.
Yeah.
You always had a code, and that was ethics before they taught us ethics. And people don't even understand our profession.
Exactly.
It's ethics in this thing.
True, of course.
And some people come in as, you remember in grad school,
some
of the things I used to say, like, is everybody coming here from trauma? I said, did anybody have a desire to be a therapist? and I always had issues with that, but I'm so happy that we all learn. And because these people with these traumatic experiences, they have these experiences that allow them to be so empathetic, But I also think that who you are you was born for this, a man of God, a father, a husband, and just a patient. Oh my God, you patient. You guys don't know how patient his brother is, man.
It's something, I find, Suave, because these are our traits that I believe can be developed, right? So we say, okay, your person is just this way. But if we work hard and develop those on a consistent basis, right? It's like anything else, practice becomes permanent. So if I practice something over and over again, I would create a permanent behavior around that. And these are sometimes learned things that we can also learn. Yes, some people may have the propensity to be better at and quicker get at a certain place. But if we put the work in some areas, we can develop ourselves along that way. And so I find that if I decide to set my North Star where I want to go, then I'm going to work as what would it take me to get there? How would that look? And each day, if I practice and keep going in that direction, I will eventually get there. Sometimes people just give up and they're not patient enough, and they say, "Oh, it didn't work." What if we would say in grad school, in our profession, it didn't work? I mean, after hours and hours, and then to come out of school and do hours and hours, and we would not be here today, right?
No,
we just stay the course and just be, keep on plodding away. Eventually, we get there, and so I think sometimes. Going back to one of the things you said earlier about even the narcissism idea, I wanted to add this piece that many times people look at a behavior and it's not prevailing. For example, there has to be this behavior consistent over a period of time. It's not a one-off thing, because people sometimes see a behavior. Oh, they just don't even know you. They don't even have seen your history, and immediately they want to label you that way. No, you cannot diagnose and simply say a person is this with one-off idea. No, it's consistently over a prevailing period of time, a pattern that you watch over and over again to safely say this person meets the criteria for it, and you examine those things. But sometimes people just have one experience, one encounter, and boom, immediately, that's who you are, right?
Yes.
No, this thing saves time.
Yeah, and you know what? And one thing about the term, I don't even think they understand it, because athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Athletes have this swagger. I was an athlete, a swagger. I was a college athlete, a professional athlete. It's a swagger, you know, and athletes like rappers or people performer or entertainers, they don't go in with a bit of hesitation, reservation about who they are and how they perform.
Right.
And I think people tend, again, confidence And
Yes.
now the term is not arrogance, it's narcissism, because
Mhm.
athletes, they go out there, they don't have like you say, faith of a must see moves mountains.
Right.
And I say doubt of a must see counsels blessings. They can afford a mustard seed of
Mhm.
insecurities, of
Mhm.
self-doubt. They have
Right.
to go in there, and then people sit there and say, wow, because they doing some incredible things, and that's
Yeah.
why they call one percenters.
Of course, of course. And I mean, I've worked across, I've worked with professional athletes. I mean, I've worked with over the years, and of course I won't necessarily, I can't mention, of course, but I've
Yes.
worked with people at that level, right, at the highest level in sports, and work with them in their context. And when I get to understand the reason why they're successful the way they are, because they
Yes.
have that, what you described, they have that there's something about
Bro.
them that when they
Yes.
get on that field, the reason why they're going to do what they do, because they have to 100% believe in themselves, which is so important for their success. Now, obviously, people see that, and then of course, treat mislabel, and because
Yes.
it's envy, sometimes it's just it's more than just the fact that the person is successful and they want to kind
Mhm.
of mischaracterize. They don't even know that person, and I've had
Yes.
close opportunity, front row seat, so to speak, in a person's life, to see their
Mhm.
life and unpack with them and realize they're just like anybody else. But when they have the game on moment,
Yo, yes.
it's game on.
Yeah. And I've seen people who are constantly achieving.
Yeah.
When I think about, and these are the things that I think people confuse. I think like when I look at Michael Strahan, great football player. He could have stopped there,
Hmm.
but he didn't.
Right.
He got the thing with Kelly. Could have
Hmm.
stopped there,
Hmm.
but he didn't. He started doing other things. He could have stopped there, but he didn't. Same thing when you look at Shaq. Could have stopped there. He
Hmm.
works every day. He's constantly, and when you're constantly achieving,
Yeah.
people who are not necessarily go-getters, they perceive it like that. Do you get enough? These people are people who are always driven to
Hmm.
be successful, and people don't understand that. And then when they find themselves to really wake up and start doing those things and become high achievers, that's where they become a little more empathetic and say, oh
Yeah.
my God, I thought this.
Yeah.
Now I know how it feels. But
Yeah.
they're not empathetic because they never had those experiences. So they
Yeah.
don't know how it feels. And sometimes I used to ask a person like you and I, how does it feel to have a baby?
Mhm.
You would never know.
I never
And
know.
then, so when I tell people, say, so how does it feel to be successful? I say, you will never know until you start.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then you could be understanding and stop
Mhm.
being so overly critical and,
Yeah.
and judgmental and doing a labeling when that's just not your role.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I just want to, if I can introduce this piece here, and we may talk about this in a few moments. But the idea of emotional intelligence, because that's really one of the things I find is ding ding ding. Yeah, so true.
Yes.
I find sometimes that when we are able to practice or look through the lens of emotional intelligence, really, which is simply mean it's just the idea to regulate my emotion, manage my emotions and the emotions of those I have relationship with. That's really what it means, right, at the bottom line. And sometimes if we don't have that ability to manage ourselves
Yes.
emotionally, it can sabotage and hijack us, where we now begin to operate from our emotions when it comes to things like these. And instead of allowing our core thinking brain to take over and execute on something, we allow our emotions to drive us. And sometimes it's our emotions that are at play, not the cognitive piece, the processor of our lives. It's the emotions. And most people, majority of people, live from their emotions. And so we have these kind of things you're describing happening so often, because most times it's emotionally driven. And so they're
Yes.
not behaving or acting in an emotionally intelligent way.
Yes. Because we all know we're human beings. Emotions sometimes block our ability to be sensible,
Oh yeah,
rational, and logical.
of
And
course.
so, and this is why it's so important to have accountability, self-awareness, and high sense of emotional intelligence. Because
Yeah,
when you're going through something, you have to know that you're not at your best at that moment.
exactly.
You
Exactly.
have to be aware, and self-awareness is so important. It
Hmm.
is so important,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
um so I know you mentioned it, but I would like, because I want people who's listening to just get some understanding and in depth what emotional intelligence is. Hold on one second. Sammy says, Sammy Stephen, thank you, brother. It's that human nature versus human behavior. Your nature will nurture your behavior, but often one's behavior corrupts their nature. Your opinion?
So your nature will nurture your behavior. Your nature, so it's nature. It's a nature nurture approach he's taking here. Often one's behavior corrupts their nature. Yeah, I think it's really not as black and white as that, right? Because there's a lot of moving parts that are at work. And remember now, our emotional brain is the most ancient part of our brain. It's the first thing that was developed in our whole brain chemistry. So our processor of our brain, the cognitive piece, the CEO, the chief executive officer of our brain, the frontal cortex, that is the last part that's fully developed in our brain chemistry. So our emotional brain is going to be what's going to hijack every event that we experience, right? So whether it's nature or nurture, it's what is there to protect us, fight, flight, freeze idea when it senses danger. So because it's the primal part of our brain, it's going to interpret things and say, is that dangerous? Is that threatening? And the moment it can somehow see it as such, I'm going to behave that way, right? So the behavior piece of what he just said, I'm going to behave that way because my mind, my brain have taken over through my emotions to define how I behave at that moment. However, if I can allow myself just to get past that emotional hijack moment, right? Then I'm gonna be able to interpret what's happening differently and behave differently. So when I say it's not black and white, there is a blurriness of it that we have to look at and step back and understand what's happening in those moments.
Yes. In addition to the frontal cortex is the last part to develop.
Yeah.
That's without trauma.
Yeah.
Just imagine someone had trauma. So not trying to navigate through those instinctive emotions in terms of logic. And if you had some childhood trauma,
it's
you remember how it significantly impairs or how you perceive the world. So those fear things, and you're like, whoa. So you got this coupled with that. And again, it's just not that simple.
Yeah. 100%. And that's why I think in many instances, I'm more a systems guy, right? So I'm more systemic in my approach. I want to look at all the contributing pieces, all the factors that are happening in a relationship or in a person's life, because we don't live in a linear world. There's so many different moving parts. So it's easy to assign and to label certain things. But if we could take a step back and look at the intricacy of what is making up what's going on, we'd be surprised and probably be embarrassed that we jumped to conclusion so quickly, right? So it's not as easy and simple as it looks. Like you're just saying, you add trauma to the brain, that is a whole different, kind of a piece to play now that you now have to look into. And that's why I'm saying it's not as black and white and as simplistic as sometimes people make it to be.
Yeah, and one of the things as a practitioner, you're talking about people coming into session who for years they thought they knew about themselves and they didn't.
Right.
And you can imagine the challenges and the struggles they have to having a stranger tell them about themselves and saying this is why you're acting and behaving the way you are. And sometimes it could be a lot of opposition. So you can imagine, I remember one of my mentors, doctors, I'm not going to say his name, but again, being a practitioner.
Yeah.
You can imagine in your personal life.
Yeah.
How difficult that can be, you know? And so, and again, it's just not that simple. You find out so many things about how people act and behave. In addition to the organic thing, where that part develops later. Just like you remember when we was kid, the last part that even close up was the top of your head.
Yes.
You got a whole cranium. That's the last part developed. So you're talking about this front lobe, the cortex, and it's developing slower. So and again, and so many people have trauma and don't realize. So those having those two things you got to work through. And so again, we have to be understanding. We have to be patient and very considerate and empathetic to people
Yeah.
because it's just not that black and white. It's just so many
Yeah.
different directions and different
Yeah.
scenarios and narratives that people go through.
And that's why I think I shifted away from this effective communication to empathic, because that's what empathic communication does. It allows you to take that time. Allows you to look more to the lens of empathy, as I described earlier, to say, let me try to understand and share. So it's not just understand, but to share your concern. So I had to then look holistically at what's happening and say, okay, how do I do that? Now, I've obviously take some professional help, and that's why you said earlier, we've got to realize that it's not just a person just read a book, watch a YouTube, and say, now you no, it's
Yes.
it takes training, because you have to train to develop yourself certain skills. 'Cause I had to learn how to put aside some of my own emotions at the time when I working with clients, because I could become, I could counter transfer
Not
my own
transference.
emotional issues, right? So I
Yes.
had to be able to manage my own emotions. And that's why I love emotional intelligence, because here's what happened. I know quickly say this, Suave. Based upon a survey, a study that was done, over 1 million people were studied on this whole idea of emotional intelligence. And what they found universally, that 66% of the world are not able to articulate truly their emotions.
Yes.
66% of their, so if you ask a person how they're feeling, they tell you what they're thinking, not what they're feeling, and
Yes.
they think they're telling you what they're feeling, right? So because we just don't know how to identify, especially the male, we haven't been given the vocabulary to articulate what we're feeling. We know we're feeling something, but we just don't know how the words to put it together. And that's why I think so many people have a hard time truly
Yes.
expressing their emotions, right? And that's why I talk about this emotional intelligence, and even written about it, because I think it's
Mm.
so important for us to understand what we're feeling and why, and how to communicate it.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, you are, as professionals, we know it was what we 1%ers in school, because it was nobody. It was what, 3 of us total, you know. And again, we learned the skills and how to communicate, how to share our feelings. Like if I'm hurt, I'm sad,
Yeah.
I can say it. I don't
Yeah.
have any reservations about it. I'm
Yeah.
angry. I'm upset. I'm
Exactly.
hurt right now. But
Exactly.
we learned those skills, and those skills became part of us.
There you go.
You know,
There you
it's
go.
in our professional life and our personal life.
Yep.
And so a lot of times, again, these people don't understand how important the training is. And it's not, something you just read a book or look on a YouTube and you learn. They haven't been trained the little intangibles that they wouldn't know in class. You remember, and again, this could be definitely taken the wrong way, but this is, you remember the one who was doing our DSM?
Yeah.
I forgot her name, but you
yeah.
remember she was sitting there saying, when you guys become professionals, never act shy and tell them, I've read more books,
Right.
did more tests, and did more research than you have.
Yes.
It's not that she said, don't say you better. It's just the fact that
Exactly.
I had to put in the work.
Yeah.
I didn't just, I didn't just take a psychology. Well, Grant, Kingsley, I took a psychology class.
Yeah.
You realize I have psychology degrees.
Yeah.
Let's work.
Yeah.
It's not a class,
Yes. Yes.
But
It's
man,
true.
it's definitely. I want you to tell the people about your organization. I want them to tell them about your books, your products, your services, availability to change their lives.
Awesome. No, thank you so much. I mean, I'm telling you, this is exciting. I mean, how time fly when you're having fun, right? So yeah, the good part about my name being so unique, Kingsley Grant, right, is one of those names
King.
thank you. So I tell people, if you go anywhere on social media and just type in Kingsley Grant, you will find me, because I've kind of, made certain that I dominate in my posting and so on, and capture that name right away. Whenever a platform opens up, I make sure I go in and lock in on that. So even my website, the same thing is true.
Okay, be careful. You can't. You may be perceived as a narcissist if you say
so
things
true.
like dominate. You got to be careful.
So true. I got exactly right. You can't celebrate your achievement.
Can't celebrate your achievements.
I'm glad that you have the context and you're providing the opportunity for us to really celebrate it here. So thank you for doing that, because we need a refreshing, fresh voice to change what's out there. Yeah. So Kingsley Grant is you can find that my website, Kingsley Grant, on Amazon, my books on a Kingsley Grant, and I just tell you briefly about that. My podcast, if you type my name in any of the Apple Podcasts, any of the podcast platforms, you'll find my podcast. The Kingsley Grant Show, Happier Marriage is my new one that I'm doing. And I coined a phrase, emo-telligent, because I took the word
Yes.
emotion and intelligence, and I created a term and say, hey, for leadership. So I teach on leadership, and I said the emo-telligent leader. There you go, right there. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, the emo-telligent leader is a leader who succeeds where others failed. And I find when we're actually saying there's nothing wrong with intelligence. We need intelligence, but IQ gets you in the door. EQ keeps you in the door, right? IQ gets you in the relationship. EQ, emotional intelligence, keeps you in the relationship, because I can really be intellectual to get into places, but that won't keep me there.
No.
What keeps me there is my ability to manage my emotions and the emotions of my teammates, of my spouse. That's what keeps me in the game. So
Yes.
yeah, I've written several books, on forgiveness. I call it forgiveness, because it's a gift to give to people, and how to forgive when your mind says yes and your heart says no. I've written a book about entrepreneurship, about midlife launch, how to launch yourself at a midlife, because I've done that myself. The midlifepreneur, I've coined that phrase again, how to be a midlifepreneur, and that's mine. And the emo-telligent leader is what I've written about too. That's my latest book. And my number one bestseller on Amazon is the midlife launch, which I did a few years back and got number one status on that, because it really speaks about people in midlife, how to really relaunch yourself and realize you're not starting over. You're actually picking up from where you are and taking all your experiences and now fast track your life. So you're not starting over as some people think they are at midlife. So I write about that to dispute that prevailing thought that I'm not starting over. No, you are going to take all your past experiences and so on and fast track yourself much quicker than you would have. So that's my what I want to share. And so thank you for allowing me to share that as well.
Yes, I like that. And again, for those who don't understand, this is not narcissism. This is celebrating your accomplishments, letting it be known.
Let me be a narcissist right here. That's one of my book right there.
Yeah, bring it over.
That's one of my book right. I'm sorry. Here, my book right there.
Wait, there we go.
Right.
Yes.
This is the midlife launch book, right?
Oh my God.
Right.
Okay.
And then this is my emo-telligent leadership book right here.
Yes. Oh my God. Well, I tell you this. When we go off the air, I definitely gonna have to, support you.
Thank you.
But the thing is, I love your presence, your presentation, your information.
Appreciate it, man.
And again, we're empowering, we're educating, we're enlightening, and we're entertaining here at Social Therapy with Dr. Brother Suave on Neighborhood Planet. Man, it has been an honor. I'm happy, man. I'm like a kid, because it's like it's like we have our dialogue, like when we talk on the phone, man. And it was simple, but it was empowering, because a lot of things people don't understand. You put in the work.
Yes.
This is not something we just Googled and heard a sound bite, man. This is work. You understand? We are scientists. Yeah. It's like when you come up with a philosophy, and it's because you like that cheeseburger. Yeah. Remember how the results come out the same, because like that cheeseburger, no matter if it's a cheeseburger in Texas, cheeseburger in Saudi Arabia, cheeseburger in India, it's going to taste the same. And we learn how to do research. We learn how to measure things, and we able to create our own words. Yeah. And again, it's not arrogance, not bragging. I heard the term is not bragging when it's true. Those were real books that you was able to show.
There you go.
You put the work in and you did it. Yes. These are real books.
That's great.
And it's work. And again, when we learned about evidence-based training, the stuff we learned, this is evidence-based. It's not our opinion.
That's
and
right.
What we're doing is trying to empower people to help them understand we're not just making this stuff up.
That's right.
And so they have to respect our experience and what we see and how we train. I thank you so much. I'm definitely, you always welcome. You, come back anytime.
Appreciate it.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, kings and queens, this has been a great broadcast tonight with my very special guest, dear friend, grad school classmate, Mr. Kingsley Grant. So just tune in every week. And if you think you learned something and it's been blessing to change your life, be sure to cash app at Cash App Suave R Walker. That's SUAVERWALKER. And be sure to share, like, comment on all our shows, and tune in every single Wednesday at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. And I'm happy, man. Listen, just remember, great minds, great places. I love you. I mean it. Bye-bye. Kingsley, make sure you stay on.
Yeah.
Okay?
What's up, everyone? I'm Brandy the Disconnector, wife, show host, entrepreneur, investor, and ICS certified life coach, here to tell you that I'm on NPNTv, the network that is by us and for us. Lock in and let's get it.
Hello, my name is Goma Marie Conde. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified trauma counselor, and I am on NPNTv.
This program was made possible by Neighborhood Planet Broadcasting Systems, Neighborhood Planet Network, and from contributions to NPNTv from viewers like you.